Welcome to the first annual Breakdown Yearly Awards. Last video of the year. Let's get into it. Let's start right off the jump with Fighter of the Year, men's and women's. Got four people in the men's category. Naoya Inoue, right? Fought twice this year, moved up to a new division, beat Cool Boy Steph and Marlon Tapales just recently, dominated both fights, came on top and dominated and became the undisputed champion in another weight division. So he is a nominee. Second up, Terrence Buck Crawford, right? I mean, even though he only fought once this year, that's been the knock about him, right? When people talk about this award, even though he's only fought once this year, he's gave us the fight that many of us had wanted to see for quite some time. We're talking about the undisputed welterweight championship fight against Errol Spence. So in this fight, you have two guys who were top 5 in the pound for pound list. It was a big fight. It was a massive fight. And how Bud won that fight was amazing in its own. I mean, he handled Spence and made it look easy, quite frankly, right? No one was expecting Bud to perform as well as he did against Spence. You might have thought Bud was going to win the fight, but you didn't think it was going to go like that. I don't care what anybody else says. You did not think that Bud was going to be able to take care of Spence as easily as he did. Bud is a nominee. Number 3 nominee for me, Devin Haney. I mean, what a year Devin Haney has had, right? You talking about becoming undisputed, fighting George Kambosos twice the year before, then coming up, gave us a great fight when he fought Vasily Lomachenko, entertaining fight, high boxing IQ, elite performance from both men. A fight that, I don't know about you, but I thoroughly enjoyed that fight, right? After that, he moves up to 140 and takes on one of the champions in Regis Prograis in a performance that was probably the best performance of his career against Regis Prograis. Dominated that fight, made it look very easy, right? The only controversy with Devin Haney is the fact that when he did fight Vasily Lomachenko, it wasn't really a clear, definitive win. Many people thought that Vasily Lomachenko actually won the fight, but for the year Devin Haney has had, he is a nominee. And last but not least, in the fight of the year on the Breakdown Awards is David Benavidez. He had a great year. Wins over Caleb Plant, Demetrius Andrade, 2 high-level guys. And Benavidez didn't back down from either of those guys, right? He came back and he had a phenomenal second half of the fight against Caleb Plant and beat up Caleb Plant pretty good in the latter rounds. He punched through Demetrius Andrade in 6 rounds, and he continues to look better and better and better. He had a great year. It's hard not to have him here as well. So those are the 4 nominees for me. My pick this year for Fighter of the Year on the Breakdown Awards, Naoya Inoue, right? Because it's the simple fact that he moved up to a new weight division and dominated both fights, right? He was supposed to have a challenge. He was supposed to get roughed up, being the smaller guy going into another division. He wasn't supposed to do as well as he did against those guys. And he moved up and took on 2 champions and beat them both by way of stoppage. And you cannot discredit how good Steve Fulton was, and you can't discredit the effort that Marlon Tapales has put forward, right? These are both champions for a reason. And Inoue came up, moved up, and beat both of these opponents in spectacular fashion. Not to mention, he became undisputed in less than a year, right? That's very, very impressive for me. And I also think activity is one thing for me as well, too. I like activity in the mix. But Bud Crawford, if Inoue is 1A, Bud is 1B. And to me, you can interchange both of these guys as well, too. But for me, this year, Fighter of the Year, Naoya Inoue. Let's move over to the Woman Fighter of the Year. For me, it's either Katie Taylor or it's Amanda Serrano, right? Katie Taylor, because she moved up to 140 to fight Chantel Cameron, lost the first fight, then came back and avenged her loss, and she is now undisputed in 2 divisions. Amanda Serrano fought 3 times because of the activity. You got to put her in the mix. Defended her belt 3 times. Not the greatest performance in some of them, but she was dominant as she usually is. But for me, the fact that Katie Taylor came back, avenged her loss, and is now undisputed in 2 divisions and fought close, exciting fights in both, for me, she is my women fighter of the year. Now, let's go on to prospect of the year. For me, I have a couple nominees. I got Andy Cruz, 2 fights, 2 wins. Elijah Garcia, 3 big wins this year against 3 great quality opponents. I put Shushu Carrington in the mix as well, 5 wins this year. Abdullah Mason, 4 wins or 5 wins this year. Emiliano Vargas, 8 wins, 7 by way of knockout. You got to put him in there as well too. You got to put Ernesto Mercado in there as well too. And you have to put Floyd Schofield in this as well. He had 4 wins as well. I'm going to go against the grain here because a lot of people would probably pick maybe Andy Cruz. No issues there. You probably pick Vargas. You might pick Schofield. Like, you can't really go wrong. But for me, I'm going up a little different here. And my prospect of the year this year is Elijah Garcia. I mean, we're talking about a spectacular year for him, man. He fought Amilcar Vidal the first time, and not a lot of people expected him to beat Vidal, including myself. When I did the breakdown of that fight, I thought that Vidal was just a little bit more experienced. He could do a little bit more, but I was wrong. And then he goes on to fight Kevin Salgado, right, in a solid, hard, tough fight, back and forth fight. And then he finishes the year by fighting Armando Resendiz in a very good fighter, an exciting fight, and he stops him in 8 rounds. It was a great year for Elijah Garcia, and I think this is the only year that he's going to be a prospect, because next year I believe he's going to be a contender. I think personally, obviously he's got a lot of things to improve on, especially defensively, but offensively, man, he does so many good things. He's strong-minded, a lot of heart, a lot of will, determination, and will to be great. And so for me, my prospect of the year this year on the Breakdown Awards is Elijah Garcia. Now, let's move forward. Let's go to fight of the year. Here are my nominees: Robeisy Ramirez and Rafael Espinoza, Jaime Munguia and Durichenko, Devin Haney, Vasily Lomachenko, Oshaki Foster and Rocky Hernandez, David Benavidez and Caleb Plant. This year, the fight of the year on the Breakdown Awards, for me, Robeisy Ramirez and Rafael Espinoza, because of everything that happened in that fight. We always want exciting fights. We want drama. We want knockdowns. We want adjustments. We want everything encapsulated in once. And that fight gave us a little bit of everything. And who doesn't like an underdog story? The underdog came out on top. It was a very impressive fight for Espinoza because we know Robeisy Ramirez. We know the amateur pedigree. We know the accolades. We know the championship pedigree. But we didn't know too much about Espinoza. And for him to come in and the way how he fought, the volume and everything that he did in that fight to come out on top, the determination, the sheer will, man, and he performed. He knew he was going to win the fight. Every fighter has to be confident, but he was able to back it up. And he got the knockdown in the last round to solidify the win. What more do you want from a drama-filled fight? It was a fantastic fight and a fight that I would love to see a rematch of. Fight of the year for me, Robeisy Ramirez and Rafael Espinoza. Now, fight of the year on the women's side, hard not to argue with this one. Hard to not think it's not Katie Taylor and Chantel Cameron, really both times. I mean, both of these women put everything on the line, and they showed skill, they showed poise, they showed confidence, they showed good power, they showed adjustments. It was just a great fight both times. Possibly we'll see a trilogy down the road, but for me, great fight. Chantel Cameron, Katie Taylor, both times fight of the year on the women's side. Now let's go over to knockout of the year. Here are my nominees: Junto Nakatani and Andrew Maloney, vicious. Oshaki Foster, Rocky Hernandez. Zheli Zhang, Joe Joyce, the second fight. Mark Magsayo's recent fight against Isaac Avalier. Naoya Inoue versus Steve Fulton, vicious. And of course, Brian Mendoza and Sebastian Fundora. And obviously, I'm missing a few, but there were some great knockouts this year. My pick, originally, I was going to go with Nakatani because that was a knockout that really made me hope that Maloney was okay. He didn't look like he was going to get up at all. I mean, that shot landed so clean, so flush. His corner should have stopped the fight the round before. But for me, I'm going a little bit different. I'm going to explain why. For me, it's O'Shaquie Foster and when he stopped Rocky Hernandez because of everything that came with that fight. O'Shaquie was losing on the cards. You could see he was frustrated. Like he literally needed the knockout to win that fight. Otherwise, he was going to lose. And if he didn't get that knockout, he wasn't going to win the fight. Right. And he came down to the last round in the final minutes of the fight. It was a phenomenal fight, but it also goes to show the heart and the character and the determination of O'Shaquie Foster. I like to take everything into the mix, man. I think it had high drama. I think it was a sequence, and it was a sequence of a accumulation of different shots. It wasn't just one shot knockout, but it was a mix of everything mixed with all of the accumulation of how the fight was going. So for me, it's O'Shaquie Foster stopping Rocky Hernandez, but Nakatani is my other pick as well too. That was the pick that I was going to go with. But when I thought about it, doing things a little bit different, when I thought about it and everything that came with it, for me, O'Shaquie Foster. Let's keep going. Let's go with upset of the year. Here are the nominees. Rafael Espinoza outlasts Robeisy Ramirez, Joseph Parker upsetting Deontay Wilder, and Giovanni Santillan upsetting Alexis Rocha. My pick, Rafael Espinoza beating Robeisy Ramirez again. This fight had everything we wanted, and it was one of my favorite fights this year. Now Espinoza is a champion, but very few people thought that Espinoza was going to win that fight. It was an upset because, again, as I said, we didn't know too much about him. We saw the record, right? We did not know too much about him. We know about Robeisy Ramirez and who he has fought, but man, great fight. Great upset. Rafael Espinoza for me on the Breakdown Awards upset of the year. Now, upset of the year on the women's side, my pick, Jalissa Guzman versus Ramla Ali. Ali was supposed to win that fight, and she was winning that fight until she decided to stay in the pocket a little longer than she needed to, and she got clipped and she paid for it. That was a big upset because Ramla Ali is a beautiful boxer, skillful, right? She knows exactly what she needs to do. She does so much. She's so technically sound, but she got caught into a fight that she wasn't supposed to be in. And Guzman, who wasn't, she was a massive underdog, and she came in and upset the apple cart, so to speak. So on the women's side, that was the upset of the year for me. Again, a close second was Yoshida and Ebony Breaks, right? That was another upset as well, too. But on the women's side, man, Jalissa Guzman's KO over Ramla Ali in the first fight. Let's keep going. Let's keep moving. Trainer of the year. There's so many different ones that you could take, man. But for me, the nominees came down to Bill Haney and Bomac. And my pick is Bomac because obviously his performance with Terrence Buck Crawford, right? But also the success of Keyshawn Davis, right? And also how he helped Eubank Jr. avenge his loss and how great he looked avenging that loss, right? So for me, it was just those three and how each of those guys have been developing and how each of those guys won their most recent fight. I think Bomac did a great job of being in the corner and helping them complete the year for them, and they were able to seal all the victories needed for that year. Man, I think Bomac deserves it. Performance of the year. I only got one option for me. Terrence Bud Crawford. There was a lot of great performances, a lot of great fights this year, but Bud takes it because of the massive fight implications of the fight that we wanted to see over the past few years, the build up to the fight, the trash talk back and forth, the Spence fans, the Bud fans, and everything that came with it. But how easily Bud came into that fight and dominated the fight, right? You cannot look past that. right? And even going back to the entrance, man, Bud was up 1-0 in the entrance. He came out with the fishnet, trying to catch the big fish with Eminem, right? It was, I mean, Eminem could have spit a couple bars, though. I think he could have spit a couple bars, but everything on that night, man, just goes to show the skill level, the toughness, the grit, the experience, and just seizing the moment, like how Terrence Bud Crawford was able to do. And it was a one-sided fight. There's no debating who was the better fighter on that night. It wasn't even close. It was one-sided all the way through. When you're waiting for your moment and you're able to seize the moment and no one can take that moment away from you, man, it's hard not to think. Like, to me, extremely mental fortitude and toughness. Terrence Bud Crawford, performance of the year. Last award on the first edition of the Breakdown Awards. Look, I'm not at home right now. I'll be back in Charlotte next week. Next year, man, we're going to do it big, man. You know, we're going to have a lot of different things. I'm going to have my suit on. We're really going to make it an event. But while I'm away, I just want to get this up and make sure that we keep this thing going for the years to come. Comeback Fighter of the Year. For me, it was, I mean, you could talk Lee Wood was in that nomination as well, too. But for me, it was Teofimo Lopez. After a Sandor Martin fight where he questioned himself, he said, man, do I still got it? Now, you can make joke about it. Now, he did make joke about it when he fought Josh Taylor later. But in that moment, it was a question that he was really asking himself because people thought that he lost that fight. It wasn't a great Teofimo Lopez performance that we've seen. We've seen what he can do when he's healthy, when he's mentally right. But that was a fight where, man, he was questioning himself, despite what he says. I've been in elite sports long enough to know that that was a true question. Teofimo Lopez, why he's the comeback fighter of the year for me, man, is because everything that he had to do, everything that he had to endure away from the ring, right? All of the noise that was coming back and forth. And we got to see some of the stuff that was happening in his life in real time. That's not tough to compartmentalize and to come in the ring and be able to be successful. We know the family stuff he's been going with, right? We know all of that stuff. And to be able to put that aside and come back after a suspect fight against Sandor Martin and dominate a guy in the division who was once the undisputed champion in Josh Taylor, man, like, it doesn't get no better than that. It doesn't get no better than that, right? Because we didn't know what version of Teofimo we were going to get. And everything that happened on the outside, he had to compartmentalize it and put it back into the ring. So for me, I gave him comeback fighter of the year in 2023. What about you? What were your thoughts? Who were your nominees and your pick for each fighter in this category? Let me know in the comment section. I want to hear from each of you. Put them down there, and I will definitely meet you down there. I also want to give a quick shout out to everybody that has continued to support the channel from day one. I appreciate each of you, whether you've been watching this day one or you came as the channel has been started, man. I appreciate each of you. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your love. I appreciate each of you for taking the time. I don't take your eyes or your ears for granted. I hope that you have came to the channel and got a little bit more than just boxing. Hopefully you came in, and if you're having a tough day, maybe something along the video, maybe a word of encouragement you grabbed from it and you were able to get uplifted, man. The channel is about boxing, but it's bigger than boxing. But I appreciate each of you. Happy holidays. God bless. And I'll see you next year.